Joining us now, Democratic Senator Andy Kim of New Jersey. We got a lot to talk about, but I do want to start with the Iran question because the Washington Post is reporting, as you know, that while the president's not yet made a decision, the Pentagon is preparing for weeks of ground operations in Iran. The Wall Street Journal is also reporting that the president is considering deploying another 10,000 ground troops to the Middle East in general. What's your reaction?
Well, this is honestly one of the most consequential moments that I've ever seen in my time in government, not just in Congress, but before when I worked in national security. I worked on the ground as a State Department officer embedded with the military in Afghanistan. I worked on the counter-ISIS fight. I want to take a moment to make a direct call to President Trump and congressional Republicans saying we cannot have American troops on the ground in Iran. This is going to be such a risky operation. And for what purpose? I mean, everything I see with Karg Island, it's just about adding leverage for diplomacy. When we see about potential efforts to open up the Strait of Hormuz, again, this is not an end to this war. This is something that will only prolong it and increase the risk at a time that we've seen already so many service members put at harm's way and this administration not giving them everything that they need.
What about sending in ground troops to secure whatever nuclear materials are underground or remain in Iran?
Well, this is something that has been looked at time and time again. An operation of that magnitude would likely take days, if not weeks, to be able to do. So what are you going to do? Have U.S. service members? Where are they going to bunker down? Where are they going to get provisions? The amount of supply is needed. And just keep in mind, Jake, that over half of American service members killed in Iraq and Afghanistan were killed by IEDs, often at the hands of Iranian-backed militia groups. It wasn't just the ballistic missiles that was the threat. So putting them in that kind of way is so risky. And again, at what cost? And certainly without Congress's approval, and by proxy, what that means is it would be without the American people's approval. And I just want to say there's a reason why Donald Trump is not coming before the American people for approval for this war. It's because he knows what the American people feel, which is that they don't want this, that they want a government that is focused on them, lowering costs. And not only is he not lowering our costs, he's increasing it. And now it's the American people that are paying for this Iran war. $200 billion that they want instead of helping us lower healthcare costs, helping us lower costs of certainly groceries, and now our gas prices are through the roof. And so the American people clearly don't want this.
Let's talk about the funding of Department of Homeland Security. You just heard the border czar, Tom Homan, say that President Trump opposes the compromise bill that was passed by the Senate because the president wants all of DHS funded, and at a time of heightened security threat, he didn't say this, but I'm paraphrasing, it's troubling that DHS isn't fully funding. Late Friday night, House Republicans passed a continuing resolution that's against what the Senate did. It's going to fund the entirety of DHS, including ICE and Border Patrol, for 8 weeks. Chuck Schumer says this is dead on arrival in the Senate. So are Democrats not going to come back and negotiate? Where does this stand?
Well, first I'll start by saying Trump, like his approach on the Iran war, has no clear objectives for how he wants to move forward when it comes to DHS. I mean, how many times have we heard him, Jake, talk about how, he doesn't want to move forward on anything unless we pass the Save America Act and so many other things like that that just send mixed signals. It's clear that the president is not focused on this. And again, it's something where the American people are left hanging because of the president's incompetence here. What we know is that we had a bill that we passed through the Senate unanimously, a bipartisan piece of legislation that sits over at the House of Representatives. If that bill went for a vote on the floor of the House of Representatives, it would have passed. I've heard that from Democrats as well as Republicans, former colleagues of mine in the House. So what is standing in the way? It's the fact that if that passed with support from Democrats and some of the Republicans, Speaker Johnson probably would have lost his job, or at least would have had it brought into question. And so for the Americans that are standing in line right now at the airports, know that that's because Speaker Johnson cared about his job more than what you are going through in your lives. And I just find that to be such a huge problem.
How long can this shutdown realistically go on?
Well, first of all, I have to say, Tom Homan did an excellent job of dodging your question earlier in the show when he said that, he doesn't know why Trump didn't start paying the TSA agents sooner if they had the authority all along? Well, I know the answer to that. The American people know. It's because he didn't care about them. That he cared about ICE. He cares about his efforts to antagonize and assault the American people in our communities. We've seen no remorse for the killings of Alex Preti and Renee Good. And so that is where things are at. This shutdown should have ended. And that's just a very clear statement. It should have ended the other day. It should not have gone along all this way, because what the Trump administration is clearly doing is going against the demands from the American people. And that's what I saw at the No Kings rally yesterday. I spoke in front of thousands of people there, every single one of them united in saying, what we see happening in our communities, the lawlessness of ICE, we don't want that here in our own homes.
So the House Republicans passed a bill that would fund all of the Department of Homeland Security for 8 weeks, which does seem as though it is something of a compromise. It's not what you want, but it's only for 8 weeks, so Democrats can continue to have another opportunity to just address the ICE and Customs and Border Patrol issues. Is the Senate going to stay out of session for the next 2 weeks?
Right now, the House has before them still the bill from the Senate. They could continue on. Instead, Speaker Johnson again chose to leave town and not actually take up the bill that could get passed through. He knows that he sent over something that is just not going to get the support in the Senate. We've been through that before, kicking the can down the road. The American people deserve an actual solution to this problem. And that is what we see so problematic. And again, it's about focus on the American people, the affordability and cost of living issue, and the fact that they don't stand for this lawlessness out there. The reforms that we're asking for, the fact that Tom Homan continues to say, oh, we're not going to have them take off their masks. I mean, we see, again, just the intransigence that is happening and the lack of having learned any lesson from all the chaos that they ensued in Minneapolis. And I think that that's what we need to show the American people.
If you are satisfied with the way that Senate Democrats are doing this, are you confident about the leadership of Democratic leader Chuck Schumer? Do you want him to stay the Democratic leader?
Well, look, I am confident that Democrats are strongest when we are united. And right now we are united. This is the most united I've ever seen the Senate Democrats and certainly Democrats in Congress across both chambers. What we see right now so clearly is now the Republicans are the ones that are fighting amongst themselves. This is the most divided I've seen the Republicans.
So is this a vote in confidence? I mean, are you supporting Chuck Schumer as Democratic leader?
I've been supportive of our leadership right now. I've been supportive of what we've been doing and having this united front against this lawlessness of the Trump administration. And I think that that's really what the American people are seeing, is what we get when the Democrats are united and the Republicans are constantly fighting themselves.